is Rebecca Ashbourne, and welcome to Series 1, Episode 3 of our Behind the Book series with DroneFieldMedia.com. This time, it is me interviewing Graeme Hanson. Hi Graeme, how are you?
Hello Rebecca. I am very well, thank you. It feels slightly odd being on this side of the conversation because usually I am the one asking about where the story came from or why a place stayed in your mind. So I shall try to behave myself and not take over completely.
We shall see how long that lasts. In this week's podcast, we are taking a look at a book you have published called The Titanic Inquiries. Tell me a bit about the book and what made you write it.
The Titanic Inquiries is a documentary reference edition about the loss of RMS Titanic, and more importantly, about the official investigations that followed it. It brings together the United States Senate report and the British Board of Trade or Lord Mersey report from 1912, with modern editorial chapters around them. So it is not just another retelling of the sinking. It is a way of putting the evidence, the reports, the timelines, the safety recommendations, and the human records into one usable volume.
And it is a substantial book as well. The website note describes it as a 313-page reference edition, which gives listeners a sense of its scale. It is not a quick pamphlet or a dramatic account. It is something you sit with, look things up in, and return to.
Exactly. I wanted it to be useful. There are already many very good narrative books about Titanic, and there are also deep specialist works. But I like the idea of making the official reports approachable. The disaster is familiar to almost everyone, but the inquiries are where the public story was turned into evidence, questions, conclusions, and, eventually, reforms.
That is the part I find interesting. We all know the great outline, the ship, the iceberg, the lifeboats, Carpathia arriving, New York waiting for news. But an inquiry has a different atmosphere. It is less cinematic, perhaps, but more revealing.
It is. You move from the shock of the event into the work of asking what happened and why. What did the ship carry? How were the boats loaded? What warnings were received? What did the officers, passengers, wireless operators and rescuers say? And then there is the bigger question. What did the world decide to change afterward?
And that probably connects with your general interest in shipping and maritime history.
Very much so. I have always been interested in ships as practical things, how they are built, how they are operated, how safety systems develop, and how people make decisions at sea. Titanic is often treated almost as a symbol, which is understandable, but behind the symbol there was a real Edwardian liner, real regulations, real communications, real passengers and crew, and a very real maritime industry learning in public from a catastrophe.
So the book gave you an opportunity to bring together two sides of your interest, the human story, but also the technical and maritime side.
Yes, that is a good way of putting it. I did not want to write a sensational book. The aim was to make a calm reference edition. There are chapters on Titanic in history, the Belfast construction, the technical portrait of the ship, life aboard, the maiden voyage, wireless distress calls, Carpathia, which was built in Wallsend where I grew up, testimony, the two inquiries, safety reforms, the search for the wreck, and what the wreck changed.
That sounds almost like a guided route through the evidence. And a local connection too.
That was the intention. The reader should always know where they are. First, the book sets the scene, the ship and her world, the voyage, the people aboard. Then it moves into the two inquiries, and after that it compares them and looks at the consequences. The official reports appear as historical documents, and the modern material is kept separate from the original 1912 wording.
That separation matters, does it not? Especially with a subject like Titanic, where legends and disputed stories have gathered around the facts for more than a century.
It matters a lot. Titanic history has a strange mixture of documentation and myth. Some things are extremely well recorded, while other details are uncertain or have been retold so often that they harden into folklore. I wanted the book to say, in effect, here is what the reports concluded, here is the context, here are the places where later evidence complicates the 1912 view, and here is where uncertainty remains.
One of the images in the source folder is a general arrangement plan of the ship. It is a side profile cutaway with the decks and class zones shown. That is a very different image from the usual romantic view of Titanic under steam.
It is, and I like that. A plan reminds us that Titanic was a working machine and a floating hotel at the same time. You see the boat deck, a deck, B deck, all the way down, and suddenly the ship becomes a structured place rather than just a silhouette. It also helps explain how class, accommodation, movement and access worked aboard the ship.
There is also a lifeboat diagram in the book images, showing the boat deck from above. That must be one of the key visual anchors for the inquiries.
Absolutely. Lifeboats sit at the centre of the public argument after the disaster. How many were carried, how they were launched, how full they were, who reached them, and what the regulations required. The inquiries had to deal with the uncomfortable fact that Titanic met the rules of the time and still did not have enough boat capacity for everyone aboard.
That is such a chilling distinction. Complying with the regulation and being genuinely safe were not the same thing.
No, and that is one of the reasons the disaster had such a long afterlife in maritime safety. The inquiries helped push reforms. More lifeboat capacity, better drills, continuous wireless watch, improved ice patrols and international safety agreements.
Carpathia is another part of the source material that caught my eye. There is a figure of RMS Carpathia at sea, and in the book she has her own chapter.
She deserves it! Carpathia was not the glamorous giant in the story. She was smaller, workaday, and not built to be the centre of attention. But Captain Arthur Rostron and his crew responded with urgency and discipline. The rescue is a maritime story in its own right. Wireless messages, altered course, preparations aboard, medical arrangements, and then the difficult arrival in New York with survivors and terrible news.
It is quite moving that the rescue ship becomes part of the moral shape of the whole event. Titanic is remembered for loss, but Carpathia is remembered for response.
Yes, and that response was studied too. In a disaster, the rescue is never separate from the inquiry. How quickly distress calls were understood, which ships heard them, what could realistically be done, and what should be required in future all become part of the same record.
The book also seems to make room for ordinary passengers. There is a passenger and crew manifest board image, and another of the third-class general room. I like that, because otherwise Titanic can become a story of famous names and statistics.
That was important to me. The book includes passenger lists, crew information, survival totals and testimony, but the aim is not to reduce people to numbers. The manifest image is a useful symbol. Names, classes, departments, families, occupations, journeys. The third-class room reminds us that many people aboard were emigrants, travelling with hopes rather than glamour.
And yet, the official inquiry format can sound dry if you describe it wrongly. What did you do to make it readable?
I tried to build handrails. There are guide chapters before the official reports, so the reader knows why each inquiry happened, how it worked, and what to look for. There are chronologies, tables for lifeboats, casualties, witnesses and recommendations, and a glossary for technical and nautical terms. I wanted readers to feel that the archive had opened, not that it had buried them.
That is a lovely phrase, actually, and it is very much your style. Practical, clear, no unnecessary noise.
I will accept that as a compliment.
It was meant as one. What did you find most striking when you put the American and British reports side by side?
The national perspectives are different. The United States acted very quickly, partly because survivors arrived in New York and there was immediate public pressure. The British inquiry had a different legal and maritime framework, with Lord Mersey's court looking closely at the Board of Trade, ship operation, warnings and responsibility. They overlap, of course, but they are not identical in tone or emphasis.
So putting them together lets the reader see not only what happened, but how two official systems tried to understand what happened.
Yes, and that is why the comparison chapters matter. The inquiries agree on some central points and differ in approach elsewhere. Later discoveries, especially the wreck's discovery in 1985, also changed the way certain physical details were understood. The wreck did not erase the inquiries, but it gave later historians a material record to set beside the testimony.
The wreck image in the source folder is a sonar-style map. The separated bow and stern sections, the debris field between them, and the scale of it all. It is quiet, but it tells you a lot.
It does. It takes the story from courtroom evidence to the seabed. The wreck confirmed some things, challenged others, and gave the disaster a physical geography. It also raised questions about preservation, exploration, and respect. Titanic is not simply an object of curiosity, it is a grave site.
That brings us to memory, I think. The final image in the contact sheet is a memorial plaque, with the name suggested rather than invented. It feels like the right visual ending for the book and perhaps for this conversation.
I agree. A reference book can contain reports, tables, and technical data, but the subject is still human loss. The point of returning to evidence is not to make the story cold, it is to treat it seriously. The people aboard deserve accuracy as well as sympathy.
And for anyone listening who wants to find the book, the links are on dronefieldmedia.com. The book is The Titanic Inquiries by Graeme Hanson, a large format reference edition bringing together the official reports, context, chronologies, passenger material, and the reforms that followed.
That is right. And I would say it is for anyone who has heard the Titanic story many times, but wants to go back to the documentary record and see how the conclusions were actually formed.
Before we finish, what would you like a reader to take away from it?
That history is often more useful when we slow down. Titanic is dramatic enough without exaggeration. The evidence, the decisions, the gaps, the reforms, and the human details are all there. If the book helps someone move beyond the legend and into the record, then it has done what I hoped.
That is a good place to leave it. Thank you, Graeme. I have enjoyed turning the microphone in your direction for once.
Thank you, Rebecca. I survived the inquiry.
Just about. Thank you for listening to Behind the Books from DroneFieldMedia.com. Links to the Titanic Inquiries and our other books are available on the website. I am Rebecca Ashbourne, and this has been Series 1, Episode 3. We hope you will join us again next time.